Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Talk Gaming. This a Talk Gaming Extra, in which we just take a few minutes to talk off the cuff, not scripted or highly polished, just take a chance to express our thoughts and opinions on a particular topic. And in this case, we're talking about Anthem, the upcoming game from EA and BioWare, which, needless to say, has a lot of people talking. So basically what happened is they just released to the broad public the full 20 or so minute gameplay demo that they showed off at E3 to lots of people, but that the broad populace hasn't really gotten the chance to see before today. So I watched it. It's paired with a developer commentary from one of the lead producers on the game, and he offers some insight and more explanations of how the game works, why we're seeing what we're seeing, and what other things the game has to offer. So I figured we could just talk about it as the gameplay goes, and we can take it from there and see where it leads us. Now, first things first, obviously, elephant in the room is that this is a game developed by BioWare / EA, but primarily BioWare as the mainstay developer, and it's got a lot riding on it. It really does. This is a game coming on the heels of Mass Effect Andromeda, which was BioWare's death knell. I mean, it really was an utter disaster, but apparently the reason that it was a disaster was because most of the resources and money, funding, expertise, all of the awesome things that you need to make a successful video game were being redirected and poured into Project Dylan, which now we know is Anthem. So at least at the outset, it seems as though there's potential because most of the development prowess and the talented teams were sent to work on this project. And so that would explain why Mass Effect Andromeda was so lacking. But that means that there's a lot riding on this particular title because it's got to make up for that and justify a whole new franchise in and of itself. Now, it's quite clear on the outset, this is EA and BioWare's attempt at a Destiny action RPG built on cooperative gameplay, specifically online co-op. And it's interesting, it's intriguing as a concept, but there's a lot of things that have to be done in order for it to be successful, and that's kind of what I want to touch on here. Now, just before we get further into it, I just want to stress, the game does look pretty. I do not doubt that it will also look pretty on launch. Likely downgraded to some extent, as is usually the case, but I do expect it to be a beautiful game. That's one thing that the Frostbite engine is capable of putting out into the world, is a beautiful game. Gameplay is where things start to look simple and bland, and that is really the one word which I think epitomizes what we've seen so far. So bland. We are seen going on all these missions where we're going and we're just shooting at things and blowing them up, and then we continue walking, and eventually we go after a large boss, take them out in a raid sort of thing. Except there's no real good reason why we're doing this. At least we don't know as of right now. Their explanation for why you get up in these suits is actually, it's meme worthy. They actually say it's so that you can feel super awesome and super heroic, I believe were his exact words in the commentary. So it's not clear if there even will be a motivation for doing this, or if it's just, yeah, no, you can go from here to here, you can fight big stuff. This is the core issue with the game as it stands, at least in my opinion. There isn't a hook. There's nothing that makes me really think this game I have to play, because the gameplay and the story and the motivations all work together so well. It's just not there. It's big explosions, a pretty coat of paint, but there's not that extra step to make me need to play it, to really motivate me to delve into this world. And maybe there is something there. It's very possible. But as of right now, I don't see it. And as of right now, they don't see the need, apparently, to push it and to talk about it, because otherwise they would be. And as of right now, they are not. Now, one of the best ways I have found to figure out if a game is actually interesting or if it's just pretty and that's all it's got going for it, is to try just verbally describing what's going on. And if it still sounds interesting, that's good, because gameplay can fairly easily be described through words. Whereas if the graphics and if the looks of the game are the primary motivating factor for it looking interesting, then that can be taken away once we describe it. So if you're not looking on screen, if you're not seeing any of this gameplay, if you've never heard of Anthem before, never seen anything from Anthem before, and you're just taking it on at face value based on what the game, underline that word, game, has to offer. If we start describing it like, okay, we're in mechanical suits and you play with a team, you can play by yourself, even though it doesn't seem like that's the goal or the primary feature or game design. It seems like it's primarily designed for co-op, but nonetheless, you can play as yourself or with a team. And you explore the world, you travel around. There's not really a strict narrative. It's more based on raiding and looting and upgrading your character. So as you play through the game, you gather loot, and that upgrades your particular suit, and so that you can continue to upgrade, fight larger bosses with better loot. And it's that grind, cyclical gameplay loop that you tend to see in MMO RPGs and the like. So as we explore the world, we find bigger monsters, we attack them, we kill them, we blow them up, and that's about it. That's the issue. There's nothing extra. There's no, and you're doing this because the world is blah, blah, blah. There's hints of it, don't get me wrong. And I'm sure some of you are already typing this in the comments. There are hints of it. There's talk of the creators of the people or beings, rather, that crafted this world before you came along, long before. And there's I believe they call them the Shapers or something like that. But they talk about these huge mythical beings that crafted this world, and there's remnants of their technology and their civilization all over the place. And that's partly what you're doing and what you're trying to keep under control, because some of these remnants are still causing issues. They get out of control. They can cause distortions and explosions, damage, and all sorts of things. So is that going to be the hook? Is the hook going to be we're going to find out what that prior civilization or prior group was, and that's kind of the motivation, sort of like in Horizon Zero Dawn, figuring out how all of this came to be, who came before, because very clearly, as you can see on screen, there's incredible set pieces here, and very clearly whoever designed and built these massive structures must have had a use for it or some reason for doing it. But the question for us gamers is that even a concern, or is it just going to be sort of context and filler to pad the world? And that's what's really unknown at this point. Being a BioWare title, I'm hopeful. I have optimistic feelings that they will cover it, they will talk about it, and they will make that the motivating force, so that you're not just playing for the sake of grind. You're not just leveling up your character for the sake of leveling up your character, which is what it seems to me right now. That seems to be the whole gameplay loop. The whole hook is just cuz, which works for some people, don't get me wrong. Obviously, it works in very, very grindy MMORPGs, but it doesn't work for me, and it won't work for a lot of people, especially BioWare fans specifically. But because it's BioWare, I have to think that if anybody on that team has any sort of leeway or sway in the studio, they'd have to push, like, why are we making the player do this? Do they have motivation, or are we just asking them to explore these ruins, collect these orbs, and deposit them in these areas because? Is that really all we're gonna do? We're bio-freaking-ware, and we're not going to explore the world beyond that? I have to think they will. So as of right now, it seems as though it's a very empty, bland world with potential. And my hope is that that potential has been realized, and they're simply not talking about it right now or making that the focus, perhaps because they're afraid that that's not going to be as interesting or as easy to brand or market. I don't know. I understand that they're going for a different market than perhaps what BioWare in the past has gone after, which already should put up some red flags. Quite clearly, EA is not trying to sell this to the RPG narrative crowd. They're trying to sell it to the Destiny crowd. And in that way, in that regard, it's probably going to be fairly successful because it seems like just Destiny on steroids with some cool suits and a prettier world, blah, blah, blah. Even that's probably going to get me hate. I don't even care. But like this is just the issue. They're going for a different market than what I think a lot of gamers are expecting. So if we go into this expecting a new Destiny just happens to be made by a studio that shares the name of a studio we previously loved for their RPGs, then we'll be okay. But I think if we go into this expecting anything more, any sort of intense narrative to justify your actions, I just don't see them pushing that. It's not an EA thing to do, and I don't see that being a priority as of right now. Perhaps that'll change. Perhaps they'll start announcing and showing some stuff off. But as of right now, it seems like it has potential. It seems they've laid the foundation, but as to whether or not they're going to take that further remains to be seen. But I am optimistic nonetheless. I know it sounds weird, but I am optimistic. As for other things that stand out to me, like the combat, it seems relatively easy. They talk about versatility and variability in the combat and how the different matches and abilities of each of the players on the team can create different outcomes. That's mainly, I think, going to be left up to enemy variety, because clearly there's lightning attacks, there's fire attacks, there's ice attacks, like there's all sorts of blunt force attacks. So depending on the types of opponents you're going up against, hopefully that's going to make a big difference. In this particular gameplay demo that they showed off, it seemed fairly monochromatic. It was just very straightforward. There wasn't a whole lot of variability. It wasn't clear that fire was working better on this enemy, and then the electrical attacks were working better on this one, but I'm sure they've added that in. So just because we don't see it in this particular video that they've given us doesn't mean it doesn't exist at all. I'm fairly optimistic, and I do think that that's got to be in there. As for other things, the HUD is very distracting and very heavy. I really hope they slim this thing down. Also, when you shoot enemies and opponents, you get the little damage counter that pops up like Assassin's Creed Origins had. I don't get why developers are doing that. I just think it looks kind of stupid. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe other people love it. I just think it looks gamey, arcadey, and it tends to obstruct your view, so it doesn't actually help or do anything. All it is just showing you numbers for damage, but you don't care. If you're immersed in the world, you're just trying to kill the thing, so why do you care if it's 3/4? Like, it doesn't, or if you dealt 170 damage, it just doesn't do much for me. So hopefully we have the option to turn that off. I'm sure we will, but you better believe I'm going to be turning that off because it looks stupid. As for other things, like, it seems like a co-op Destiny game. That's really all it is. Like gameplay trailers like this, you just have to be so careful with, because we saw a gameplay trailer with 4-person co-op for Assassin's Creed Unity, and to be fair, that demo that they showed off at E3 in, I suppose it was 2014, looked pretty good, and it looked fun. It looked polished, and obviously the game that we received was the farthest thing from that. So just because this particular gameplay demo looks polished, looks like it's fairly far along, doesn't mean that that's going to be the end result. I hope it is. Do not get me wrong. I hope it is. But as of right now, they've lost all of the trust that they previously built up. And of course, it's EA. They constantly, time and time again, continue to butcher and destroy any semblance of trust that the community has in them. They had the chance to overcome the screw-ups of Battlefront 1, or the original Battlefront, with Battlefront 2, and they screwed that up royally. And not just like they sort of dropped the ball and it didn't fully live up to expectations. It ended up being more of the same, but way, way worse. But they had lied to everybody and tried to convince them it was pro-consumer when it wasn't, which made it far, far worse. EA is just not a good company, like in terms of pro-consumer rights and what gamers hope for. That's just not their prerogative, and in that case, so be it. It's a business. It doesn't have to be their prerogative, but I think it's important to remind ourselves of that. So we can look at a gameplay trailer like this. You might be looking at this gameplay and thinking, this looks freaking awesome. I want more of this. I want nothing but this. In which case, good on you. That's great. I hope you play. I hope you really enjoy it, and I do hope it's awesome, because if this turns out to be the way that they're pitching it, I think it really could be a fun way to spend some, you know, weekend nights with friends, being able to just sit down. We all get on our respective consoles and we can all just play together like that. That'd be awesome. I think that'd be a blast. And yeah, I said consoles to piss off the PC. It's okay. I have a PC. I'll probably be playing this on PC. It's okay. But specifically, my friends are poor, so they don't tend to have gaming PCs. But regardless, I think the game looks interesting. I think there's potential, specifically in how they motivate the player to engage in the gameplay loop. But as of right now, they haven't talked about anything, and it doesn't seem to be high on the priority list whatsoever. And so that worries me. And it's worried many people, which is the main reason that people are criticizing it, just because it's lacking that hook, that extra little something to push you to do all of this. And it's tough to show that off in a demo at E3 before you've started your full-on marketing push, but it is concerning for me. Now, they're set to release, I believe, in February or early winter/spring of 2019, so it is fairly close. It is a game that EA apparently has a lot riding on. They've invested untold millions into this project and basically sacrificed Andromeda at the altar of Anthem. And so if they pull it off, hopefully it'll be amazing, and hopefully it'll be everything we had hoped Andromeda would be. But as of right now, I'm just very skeptical, and I think you should be too. This is not a game you should be pre-ordering. It's not a game you should be buying deluxe ultimate editions before reviews come out and before you've heard people you trust talk about it, because at this point there's just no faith, there's no trust left. And so you shouldn't give it to them. You shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt, because frankly, they haven't earned it. Maybe this will be the game they earn it back, and a year from now, we'll look back on this and be like, yeah, Anthem, that's game of the year. This thing is so incredible. I'm blown away at the fact that this came from E-freaking-A. But I think we all know that's not highly likely. It's such an absurd statement to say out loud, even just to think and ponder. I do not think that it's very likely. But I do want to hear your thoughts on all this. I do want to hear your thoughts on the game down in the comment section below. So let me know what you think of it. I will be reading through all the comments, and I do appreciate getting all of that feedback. I do find it fascinating. But that's about all my thoughts. That's what I'm thinking. Let me know down below. Thank you for watching, everybody. I honestly do appreciate it. I love each and every single one of you more than you could possibly know. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.